With the conclusion of episode 4, we finally had the biggest casualty of Dance of the Dragons, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, the rider of Meleys, the Red Queen. The woman remembered by history as the queen who never was, has found her way to the final rest. It was an emotional scene that parallels another from the history of House of Targaryen, but we'd like to thank HBO for toning it down with this one, because in the books, Rhaenys' death was far more violent. House of the Dragon's creative liberties have divided many fans this season, but softening the death of the queen who never was is one of the better ones. Still, we'll be breaking down just how different it was from Fire and Blood, and also how it paralleled the death of the first Rhaenys, wife to Aegon the Conqueror. So spoiler warning for the uninitiated, because we'll be going beyond episode 4 to explain this thing in detail. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Battle of Rook's Rest, a coordinated assault that was far worse in the books. If we're going to talk about the differences between the book and the show, we have to start at the beginning, and that would be the aftermath of Prince Lucerys' death. In Fire and Blood, Rhaenyra was said to have been broken by the loss of her second child. She'd given birth to a stillborn daughter a few weeks before she sent Luke to Storm's End, and now she'd lost him as well. The grief of losing 2 children back to back made her retreat to her chambers, and give command over the war effort to Lord Corlys Velaryon and Princess Rhaenys. Corlys and Rhaenys were the reason Rhaenyra's claim was alive in the first place. Aegon had the wealth of Houses Lannister and Hightower propping him up. He'd managed to win the race for the support of House Baratheon, whom Rhaenys had assumed would support the Black Cause because her mother Jocelyn was a Baratheon. Without the fleets and dragons of House Velaryon, Rhaenyra would have been crushed immediately and there would be no civil war. It's thanks to them that she held out long enough to send envoys to gather allies. When news of Luke's death reached Dragonstone, the queen collapsed, and her son swore vengeance. Not Jacaerys, but young Joffrey, who was only 11 at the time. It was Rhaenys who stopped him from mounting his dragon and flying to King's Landing for revenge, with the aid of her husband. The queen who never was did a capable job of holding Rhaenyra's council together, but ultimately the authority to make decisions remained with the queen, and that's where the seed of conflict within the Black's camp was sown. In Fire and Blood, we're told that Lord Staunton sent a request for backup 9 days before Meleys arrived with Rhaenys upon her back. When the Blacks heard that Cole was advancing on Rook's Rest, Jace and Joff both volunteered to fly to war, but Rhaenyra forbade them from doing so. Instead, she sent Rhaenys to see to the matter, for she had the largest and fastest dragon among the Blacks. The queen who never was scored a few small victories with her Red Queen. Rhaenys burdened the Kingmaker's archers and Scorpion operators while avoiding their projectiles, but it had been a trap from the start. Aegon and Aemond descended upon the 2 queens, and what followed was a terrible dance between dragons. Meleys fought both Sunfire and Vhagar, and while she managed to wound the former grievously, the latter killed both her and her rider. The Red Queen's body didn't even hit the ground in one piece. It's said that Meleys was torn to pieces as she fell, which implies that Vhagar tried to cannibalize her mid-air. A body was found close to hers, charred black so no one could tell who it truly was, but it could only have been Rhaenys, who had to contend with the flames of 2 dragons at once. The fates of both the Queen Who Never Was and her dragon are much kinder in the TV show, but that's mostly down to how Ryan Condal has chosen to interpret things. In the books, the title of episode 4 refers to the 2 sides that fought in the Civil War. The Red Dragon and the Gold is the title of a section of Fire and Blood, which refers to the color of the dragons displayed on Rhaenyra and Aegon's standards. In the book, the only difference between their battle standards was the fact that Aegon had dyed his 3-headed dragon golden, in honor of Sunfire. The background remained black, whereas in the show, it has been changed to Hightower green. The show has also taken that title literally, because the focus of episode 4 was the battle between the Red Dragon Meleys and Sunfire the Golden. A couple of other creative liberties were taken as well, as you'll soon see. An unlikely trap and an echo of the past. How Rhaenys' death mirrors that of Queen Rhaenys Targaryen. We mentioned a few moments ago that in the books, the death of Rhaenys was a lot more gruesome. Let's look at that a bit more closely, because the show changed many details surrounding the same. Fire and Blood tells us that when Criston sprung his trap, Aegon, Aemond, and Rhaenys all rose 1,000 feet into the sky, as if they were locked in a cowboy standoff between dragons. Once they got there is when the battle began, and it's only spoken of briefly. It's said that Meleys fought Sunfire viciously, tore half of her wing off, and had her jaws around the golden dragon's neck for a moment, before Vhagar fell upon them both. The meaning of this statement could be figurative, as in she ambushed them, but we think it's literal, as in she literally fell upon Meleys and Sunfire from the sky. She must have taken a few chunks out of Meleys' body, because when she hit the ground, her body scattered into bits, and her head came undone. It was then carried to King's Landing, along with Aegon's injured, yet clearly alive body. The king's incapacitation saw Criston Cole appoint his brother as protector of the realm and Prince Regent, and Septon Eustace writes that Aemon took these duties all too readily. He took the crown of the Conqueror for his own during this time, and when he said that it looked better on him than it ever did on Aegon, that was our first proper indication of his ambitions. Till then, Fire and Blood had not addressed the possibility overtly, but House of the Dragon has made it clear from the start. In Season 1, Aemon expressed his desire to become king to none other than Criston Cole himself. He argued that he was more learned and a better trained warrior, and to be fair, he is both of those things. Episode 4 showed us that Aegon can't even speak High Valyrian properly. He can understand it, but his fluency in speaking it might as well be that of a child's. So yes, Aemon would make a better king in that regard. Perhaps this is why Ryan Condal also interprets that Vhagar falling on Sunfire and Meleys line as being deliberate, and decides to separate the three dragons in their battle. In the show, we see Sunfire and Meleys go at it first, with Aemon holding Vhagar back until he found the opportunity to strike. He got that when Meleys locked down Sunfire midair with her claws and her jaw, and he ambushed the enemy with a jet of dragon flame. However, it's pretty clear that Vhagar's flames were directed in Aegon's direction, and when Sunfire separated from Meleys, that's when round 2 began. Rhaenys was now being forced to fight against the largest dragon in the world, and yet somehow she managed to get caught unawares. As she made a circle around Rook's Rest, Rhaegar rose up from the ground and clamped her jaws around Meleys' neck. We saw the life getting choked out of her eyes, as the part of her neck that Vhagar held onto turned pitch black. With the dragon dead, Aemon knew the rider wouldn't survive for long, so he just let Rhaenys and Meleys fall to the ground. This entire sequence of events is exclusive to the show, for in the books, Meleys and Rhaenys were clawed, jawed, and burnt to death. The story of the green savagery spread throughout the land, and when Meleys' head was brought to King's Landing, thousands fled the city. In the show, Aemon seemed to have tried to kill his idiot brother, or isn't bothered by him becoming collateral damage at the very least. And as for Rhaenys, her death seems to be an intentional echo of her namesake's passing. When Meleys is let go by Vhagar, we see Rhaenys sort of accept her death and take a moment to process what's coming. Then Meleys' dead body crashes through a tower and collapses part of the curtain wall that protects Rook's Rest. In Fire and Blood, all three dragons were said to have crash-landed in a field a few leagues from the castle, but in the show, only Sunfire crash-lands that far. Vhagar flies out of the fight unscathed, and Meleys' dead body destroyed the very castle it was sent out to protect. It's possible that the showrunners decided against such a horrifying end for Rhaenys because the audience really connected with her character, and Eve Best is just the best. But we'd like to think it was because they intentionally wanted to invoke the image of the first Rhaenys, the Queen of Aegon the Conqueror. Queen Rhaenys Targaryen was a great beauty and lover of song and the court life. She wasn't as martial as her elder sister Visenya, who's said to have fought in a man's mail, and she was just as fierce, but she fought alongside Aegon atop her dragon Meraxes. Rhaenys flew into battle on multiple occasions during Aegon's conquest, assisting the Conqueror's hand in securing the Stormlands, and then with the Field of Fire, where the three dragons defeated two kings and their kingdoms. Rhaenys was one of the principal figures of the First Dornish War. However, it would be that same war that takes her life. In the year 10 AC, while making a pass at Hellholt, the seat of House Uller, Meraxes was struck through the eye by a scorpion bolt, and thus occurred the first recorded dragon death on Westerosi soil. It's said that her body fell upon Hellholt, destroying its tower and half of its curtain wall, with Queen Rhaenys still strapped to the saddle. Criston Cole's strategy at Rook's Rest was going to be similar. He was a soldier from the Dornish marches, and no doubt knew of the tale of Meraxes' death. In Fire and Blood, he brought along scorpions of a similar make and model to the one that killed the previous Rhaenys dragon, to see if he could replicate the results. He does, but not in the way he expected to. And as for the Queen Who Never Was, going out the same way as her namesake was no doubt an honor. The Rhaenys from House of the Dragon was like a combination of both of Aegon's sister wives. She was courtly and playful like Aegon's Rhaenys, and fiery and fierce like Visenya. That her death paralleled the first High Queen's is a bitter pill to swallow, because she isn't called the Queen Who Never Was for no reason. All this bloodshed could have been avoided had Jaehaerys chosen to follow Valerian's customs of inheritance, but because he didn't, it led to a civil war that wiped out two great generations of Targaryens. The worst fate of them all was suffered by Rhaenys, but at least she can tell her ancestors that she went out fighting, if there's an afterlife for the Dragon Lords. Marvelous verdict. If there isn't, then we're glad the show didn't burn her like her daughter, because that would have been more than we could handle. Rhaenys Targaryen had been the voice of reason for too long, and with her demise, all bets are truly off. The war between dragons will take whatever course is best for the dragons, and that usually involves fire and blood aplenty. But that concern is for next week. What we want to know now are your thoughts on Rhaenys' death, so let your fingers fly in the comments section down below, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, remember to run for your life if you see a strange shadow coming in your direction from the sky, because it will probably be the last thing you ever see. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone!